Obviously, it's been another traumatic week for our country when it comes to police force and how it's used. We've also seen protests happening across the country since the shooting of Jacob Blake. You know, when you see these things happen, how do you think technology can help police departments make better decisions?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a tragedy, I think, from all sides. We're seeing this escalating violence now with people bringing guns to these protests, and that's even making the complexity of public safety just so much more challenging. I do think, tech does have a big role to play here. I think part of the reason that, candidly, we're seeing this level of energy right now is because of the transparency. In the case of what happened with George Floyd, I think because that was captured in so much detail, including with police body cameras, the truth had nowhere to hide. And what makes this different from every other incident in the past is that every major police chief I know of has come out, and for the first time I've seen this happen, they've said, you know what, this was wrong and police need to change. If we go back to Michael Brown or previous cases, there was always so much uncertainty. Well, we don't know if Mr. Brown was assaulting the officer or not. Here, this level of transparency is creating real impetus for change. Now, unfortunately, that also is coming with a lot of anguish and social turmoil. But I at least am hopeful that this energy is going to translate into meaningful change.
Your mission, you say, is to make the bullet obsolete through your portfolio of technology, which includes body cams, tasers, VR, simulations. How exactly do you plan to do that?
Well, in its simplest, if we make non-lethal weapons effective and reliable enough that police don't have to go to their firearms, that's the ultimate goal. We're not there yet. Today, the reason police go to lethal force is it remains the most reliable way to stop a threat. But that is a technology problem, and we're working actively on solving it. And then all these other pieces around body cameras and police training are about optimizing a police agency's ability to hold its own members accountable, to train them better, and to at least minimize the risks to the degree that's possible.
The main criticism of body cameras, though, is that police can withhold the footage if it makes them look bad, which throws the accountability out the window.
Yeah, I think that's a mischaracterization. There are challenges around protecting people's privacy. For example, if police are involved in an incident, some people would say, well, they should just release all the video. Well, in some cases, you have child victims and others there, so there needs to be redaction of that video before it's released. But I would say the trajectory of history is that these videos are being released. Just a few years ago, LAPD had a policy of releasing no body camera videos. Now they have a policy of releasing every single one of them that involves any sort of use of force. And I think that's going to continue to move in that direction.
Tell us about the VR simulations and training that you provide. For example, a violent protest like what we've seen in Portland over the weekend. How could your technology help officers respond there?
Well, where I think the technology can help is actually in a more everyday sort of scenario. These protests are certainly challenging, but something that happens all the time is police have to deal with people with mental health issues, schizophrenics, people that might be suicidal. And we're using VR to give police officers a chance to go through those scenarios and practice them in a highly immersive way. And not only experiencing what it's like to be a police officer in those roles, but we actually give them the chance to step into what it's like for a person on the receiving end of a police interaction. And what we're hearing, both from psychological experts and from law enforcement who've been through the training, is that that is a powerful tool. Because it's one thing to go, hey, here's a PowerPoint with 10 checkboxes about what you should or shouldn't do with dealing with somebody who's schizophrenic. That's way different than actually going through an immersive 360 video experience where you're actually experiencing what it's like for that person. And we're hoping that that will give police the tools to better understand how they can interact effectively.
So what police departments are you working with?
So we work with the vast majority of police departments across the country. Whether it's with our taser weapons or body cameras, it's pretty hard to find a police department that we don't have some sort of relationship with today.
Now, given that you've got many police departments facing funding shortages, where does that leave Axon? Often new technology can be one of the first things that gets cut.
Well, as it turns out with police departments, the vast majority, like over 90% of their budget goes to personnel related costs. And so unfortunately, if there is a cut in funding, that means it's going to translate into reductions in headcount. And what we've seen historically is if that happens, the agencies actually have to focus more on spending on technology to automate things that previously they did with human capital.
What's your vision for how policing looks different, let's say 20 years from now? Do you imagine that things will have dramatically changed?
20 years from now, police shootings are going to be exceedingly rare. In fact, if we do our job right, they may never happen in 20 years.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
All right.
It's just hard to imagine.
Imagine if you had Captain Kirk's phaser from Star Trek. There's a reason they never whip out a Glock handgun and shoot a 9mm bullet at someone in this vision of the future. Just like 200 years ago, police walked around with swords or with other sharp instruments. Technology moves us forward. The only reason police shoot and kill people today is because it is the only truly reliable way to stop a threat. That is a technology problem. The minute that police have the equivalent of the phaser, there will be no legal justification for them to shoot and kill someone. Now, I want to tell you that is a high bar to hit technologically, but you gave me 20 years and we'll do it in 10.
Well, I just have to push back there a little bit because it's, they might think it's the only way to stop a threat, but the question is it really a threat? And is that kind of force necessary in that moment?
For sure. Those are legitimate questions in any of these individual incidents. The challenge is, if you put yourself in the police officer's shoes, when they're human beings as well, they're scared right now with what's going on. They're under tremendous stress. And yes, sometimes they make bad decisions, but I can tell you today, standard police training is, if they fear for their life, the thing in their hand is a gun, because today that is the only thing sufficiently reliable that they would bet their life on it. And that is the problem we're working to solve. We need to give them something so reliable they would bet their own life on something else.